When I was 6, the Cultural Revolution began. Soon the madness spread to Zhoushan Island of East China Sea, where I lived with my family. Everything was shut down: stores, factories, schools, libraries. Books were burned, except for Chairman Mao's work, red books. My father, a captain of a Navy ship, was exiled to deep mountains far away. My mother, house arrested for teaching Western music. As the eldest daughter, I had to feed my family, my grandma, my mother, my 3 siblings. I raised chickens and grew vegetables in the backyard, walking 6 miles every day through minefields and bullets to look for food. 2 years went by. My dream for college seemed more and more impossible and dangerous. One early morning, I took out my stove to light a fire. My little coal stove cooked 3 meals every day for my family. I opened the door and saw Jia, the new girl next door. She was reading Chairman Mao's book under a streetlight. Her face was smeared with tears and snot. Who would still be weeping over Chairman Mao's words these days, let alone Jia, the uppity girl from Beijing, exiled with her dad to that island. Her dad was a Navy admiral and waiting for the verdict from Beijing, either to be further exiled to Mongolia to die or called back to Beijing in full glory. I tiptoed over and peeked. I gasped. The book she was reading had nothing to do with Chairman Mao. It was Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid. The story that sparked my dream for college when I first heard it over the radio. I had begged my mama to send me to start my school a year earlier so I could read on my own. Mama agreed, even promised that if I got straight A's, she would buy me a whole set of Andersen's fairy tales. I did, but the Cultural Revolution broke out, and her students became Chairman Mao's little red guards. They shaved her head and paraded her around the streets along with other teachers. They came to our home, rounded up our books and burned them on the streets. I had tried to rake through every book pile to look for my mermaid, but no luck. Now I found her in Jia's hand, wrapped with Chairman Mao's red book cover. Jia didn't know I was reading over her shoulders until she heard me sobbing. She jumped. Little Mermaid clutched her chest, her eyes telling me she would claw me to death if I dared to report her. We glared at each other, and suddenly we laughed, pointing at each other's wet face. We knew our secret would be safe. I begged Jia to loan me her book just for a few hours. I would read it in the cornfields on my way to the market. Mama and Grandma would be mad for not bringing food home that day, but who cares? Jia shook her head and started walking home. Wait, I shouted. I have something to trade with you. She snorted and kept walking. Well, I don't blame her. I was 12 years old, but I looked like a starving 5-year-old in rags. Why would she think I would have anything for her? 我有1001夜, I whispered. She paused. I took my time waddling to my chicken coop to retrieve my book. I knew Jia would be waiting because 1001夜, aka The Arabian Nights, was the most banned and most difficult book to get in China. I had found the book outside Uncle Shi's apartment When he died of TB, his family threw out everything, including his books, on the street, hoping the Red Guards would burn it all for them. But nobody would touch his stuff. The book was half ruined with sunlight and rain and snow. But I don't care. The beautiful stories had brightened my gloomy days. Arabian Nights. I waved the book to Jaja's face. My goodness, she snatched the book from my hand and thrust it, Little Mermaid, into mine. How on earth did you get this? I smiled. We underground book traders had the strict rule, no question asked ever. We agreed to meet again next day, same spot, same time, to return or renew. But the renewal lasted more than 2 weeks. Feeding my family was a full-time job, and I had no safe place to read. I shared a bed with my siblings. My grandma also slept in the same room. I tried to read in trees and in the cornfields and in the public bathroom, but almost got caught a few times. So Jaja finally led me into her bedroom. We lolled around on her bed and read and chatted. I told her my secret dream to go to college inspired by The Little Mermaid. She confessed she had been practicing dancing just like Little Mermaid. We fantasized having our own underground Little Mermaid book club someday, so we would have endless books to read. One of my chores was to raise chickens. I had 10 hens. My favorite was Silky. She had pure white feather and a pitch black face. Even her bone and meat and blood were black, Grandma told me, the best tonic for humans. So Mama would always order me to kill her and get her meat whenever Silky stopped laying eggs. She would have killed her herself if she could catch her, but chickens could really run fast, especially Silky. So, except when she was sitting on eggs. I had managed to save Silky's life a dozen times, but this time I knew she was determined to have babies. So I started digging an underground nest for her behind the chicken coop to keep her away from weasels and Mama. A few strikes, my pickaxe hit a wooden box. I brushed away the dust, pried open the lid, and pulled out music sheets of Bach, Beethoven, then books by Shakespeare, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, War and Peace, and at the bottom was the complete fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen. On the first page, Mama's handwriting, to my stubborn pin. So she did fulfill her promise, only she didn't have enough time to give it to me before the Cultural Revolution began. I ran to Jaja, dragged her over to the chicken coop, and we pranced around our treasure box like headless chickens, chanting, "Our Little Mermaid Book Club, our Little Mermaid Book Club." Jaja found a bunch of her friends also exiled to the island, and they each had a cache of banned books. So we gathered in the woods, cut our wrists, mixed our blood, and swearing as mermaids and merboys. Now we had hundreds of books to read, poetry, novels, philosophy, history, math, chemistry, physics. We even found military training manuals, and we practiced accordingly. So we actually had a school in the woods. We were careful. If we got caught, we would go to jail along with our families. A year passed by. Jaja got ambitious. She wanted to expand, so we'd have more books to read. I told her to wait. Something was about to happen. That night, I dreamed a monster picked by my braid and threw me into a fire pit. I woke up. Mama was dragging me out of the bed into the kitchen, the little mermaid in her hand. "Where did you get this?" she hissed. I looked at her. She knew damn well where I got this book. It had her inscription on it. I wanted to know how she got this book. I had hidden it under Grandma's mattress, the last place she would look. The two of them were constantly fighting. Mama slapped my face with the book. I could taste blood in my mouth. "Go get a whip," she said. Her whip was made of bamboo skin and hurt more than leather, and we had to fetch it for her. "You want to kill us? I'm going to kill you first," she whipped. I held my face with my hands. The pain was unbearable, not from the whipping, but from knowing that I would never see my mermaid ever again. "Now get a stove and start a fire," she ordered. Then she watched me tear the book page by page. I could hear Little Mermaid scream as she turned into ashes in the fire. "Now, where is the rest?" she asked. I knew she had to find every book from the box and destroy them all before they destroyed us. But I had sworn to protect my books with my life. So she threw down her whip and started pulling up the mattress and floorboards and drawers. She knew where to look. She was my mama. Soon, a huge pile gathered by the window and the stove. She sat down and watched me burn every book. When everything was gone, she went back to her bed. I walked to the chicken coop. Silky came over with her babies, nudging my hand, cooing for food. I looked up at the sky. No moon, no star, no hope. My book club had been my only joy. Now it's gone. I was choking with tears when a voice came. "Don't cry, Ping. Go to the mountains. Tell your story to trees and birds and your mermaid friends. They could burn your books, but not your story." I stood up. I knew what I was going to do. So I finished my chores that day, then went into the woods with Jaja. Nobody spoke. The bruises on my face said everything. We looked at each other for a long time. Then suddenly, words flew out of my mouth like stars, forming a constellation of Little Mermaid, her beauty and courage to go after a dream at any cost. Everyone listened as if it were their first time. This is how we started our story club. We told stories to each other in the woods, then to our siblings at home. When adults joined in, we moved our club to the yard of the Navy compound. When winter came, everyone would bring a piece of wood for the bonfire. Soon our stories ran out from our collections, and we started making our own stories, and people loved it even better. We were hungry and cold, and we had no future, but we had stories. On Jaja's 14th birthday, I threw her a big party. She was going to Mongolia with her dad the next day. I might never see her again. I told a story that had sparked our friendship 5 years ago, the story of a little girl from the sea who had kept us alive all these years. Over the blazing fire, I spotted my mother. She had tears in her eyes, and she listened. My heart quivered with joy and hope. I knew at that moment my college dream would come true, even though it was still impossible and dangerous. I may have lost my book battle with my mama, but we had won the war together because we shared the same dream, the same yearning for hope, and nobody could take that away from us. Thank you.